All right, welcome everyone. Today we're going to be talking about strings. So we've talked about strings before. We've established that they're just a series of characters connected together. And I wanted to make sure that we think about strings in that way. It's a series of characters connected together, meaning that I can iterate and maneuver through each one of these characters or grab one specific character because it's not just all one unique instance. It's a series of instances mashed up together. All right, great. Well, let's start diving into our lecture here. The first thing that we have is, hey, we want to write a greeting, and we can see that it can be established in either single or double quotes. So let's write our greeting here. We have, hello, Python. Let's go with that one. And if we were to execute this script, it would actually throw an error due to these other manipulations that we've had so far. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to comment everything else below. All right, so now I'm going to change directory into my 2-data types. And here, I'm going to go ahead and execute the script utilizing Python 3 2.1 for strings. Now we can see that we get hello Python. Now I'm using double quotation marks there. Well, what happens if I were to switch that out for single quotation marks? Let's try to execute this one more time. Python 3 2.1 dash strings. Well, we still get hello Python. So is there a difference between them? The difference is just convenience sake. For example, if I were to try to run it is or it's put together a beautiful day, we can see that I'm running into a bit of an error, or it's being highlighted in red, but I'm not sure why. Let's go ahead and figure out what's going on. I'm going to execute Python 3 2.1 dash strings, and I get an error. It's telling me, hey, you have an unterminated string literal at the very end. Okay, but if I remove that string literal and I execute my script again, it now tells me that I have invalid syntax. Well, what's happening is this apostrophe, right? When I try to utilize an apostrophe, well, now my single quotes are being ended prematurely. So my string is being cut off at it. And then from there, it assumes that these are variables or that I'm trying to call some sort of function. So there's a couple of ways around this. I can definitely use the escape character, which is a backward slash, to take care of that. And then it will read it as a string one more time. So now we can see Python, it's a beautiful day. But I can also just not overcomplicate my life and ensure that I'm always utilizing double quotes when I write my strings. And now there's no need for an escape character. It is always going to read my apostrophes without a problem. All right, so there's the difference between single and double quotes. Let's take a look at our following example here. All right, in this example, we talk about strings can be assigned. We've already seen that. So in exercise 1, we have an assigned string of Python is fun. That's going to be an exercise for you all. Here we have a string concatenation. You can concatenate or join strings using the plus operator. And here's an example. So we have John Doe, and I want to see its full name. Well, if I want to see the full name, I would do John plus a space, because I want to make sure that the strings aren't actually put together, and then Doe. And now we have my print statement down below. I'm going to go ahead and utilize the clear command here on my shell, just so I could have an empty script. Now I'm going to utilize Python 3 2.1 strings.py. I get a syntax error that's happening from down below one more time. Let me go ahead and comment out all the code below so that we don't run into that error anymore. Okay, again, I'm going to run the clear command. and then utilize Python 3. And now we can see, hello, John Doe is being printed out. I am simply adding string, I'm gluing it together by utilizing the plus operator. Great. Let's move on into our next exercise. All right, so for our next exercise, you can find the length of a string using the len function. So again, a string is a series of characters placed together, almost like a list or a tuple. So this len function can take in anything that is a series of instances placed together and give us back the total length of it, or the number of instances within it. So here we have a hello Python, and if I wanted to see the length of this message, well, I just have to call the variable of message. You'll notice how it has an opening and closing parentheses, so it works almost like a function, but this is actually a string method, which you'll learn more about if you go ahead and pick up Python for object-oriented programming. But len is a name of a method that belongs to strings. And what it does is it adopts a string or a series of instances placed together, and it returns the total length. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at this and see what it actually returns for us. I'm going to comment out all the code below again, just to make sure that it doesn't get in the way. I'm going to execute my script utilizing Python 3 2.1 strings.py. Okay, great. So now all of my statements are coming so far. I have the length of my message is 14 characters. Notice that even blank spaces, commas, and special characters are being analyzed as part of the string. Right? We're not just looking at the characters, we're looking at every single instance of the string mashed together. All right, moving on. Now in this next portion here, we have strings are indexed, meaning each character has a position starting at 0, almost like a list. Well, if we take a look at Word, here's my instances mashed together. I have P at index 0. I'm sure we've heard it, but in programming, we always start counting from 0. We have Y at index 1, T at index 2, H at index 3, O at index 4, and N at index 5. So if I wanted to see my first and last letter, I could call the word. First will always be index 0. And then to get the very last letter, there's a couple of different ways that we can do this. I could count it word for word or letter by letter and make sure that it is index 5. All right, now let's go ahead and run our script here. I apologize. Let me go ahead and comment everything else below so that it doesn't get in the way. Utilize Python 3 for script 2.1 strings, and we can see P and N. Now, the 0 for giving the first letter is always going to be pretty straightforward. But this last letter, we kind of run into a little bit of an issue there, right? Because what if my string was an entire paragraph? I wouldn't want to count each individual letter of that entire paragraph. So what's my workaround there? Well, maybe we can do something like trying a negative number. What happens if I try -1? So -1 gives me the last letter, and 0 gives me the first letter every time. Well, that's because sequences or instances that are matched together, such as list and strings and tuples, you can count both forward and backwards. If you're counting forward, you start from 0, moving up till 5. And if you're counting backwards, you start from -1, moving back to -5. Or excuse me, -4 in this case. All right, so there we have our first letter and last letter and how to access each individual index for each letter itself. Great. Now, in our next exercise, we have a substring. Well, we talked about how to access one independent letter at a time. How could I grab a substring of something, right? So in this case, we have Python is going to be the word that we utilize again. But now I only want to grab the Y, T, and H of this string. Well, how could I do that? Well, first I would have to reference the variable of word. And then just like as if I were indexing, I'm going to establish where is it that the first character that I want appears, which in this case, Y is in index 1. All right, we can look back up that word. We see 0 and 1. And TH, well, H is at index 3. Let's see what happens if I put index 3 here. All right, let's run our code and see what we get back there. I'm going to go ahead and execute my script. Well, I'm only getting Y and T. Why is that? I know that H is in fact at index 3. If I go back up and I count it, 0, 1, 2, 3. So H is at index 3. What's going on here? Well, when you're slicing or you're utilizing this method to be able to grab a substring, you need to consider this rule. The first number that you provide is inclusive, meaning that it will be represented in the string. We will see it. The second number, or cutoff, is exclusive, meaning that it will not be included in the substring. So in this case, Y and T are included, but H is being excluded from the string. So you always have to go one additional step. So in this case, it will be 4. Now, when I execute my script, we get YTH for the substring. Again, the first number is inclusive and the last number is exclusive. All right, moving forward. Let me go ahead and uncomment all of this code. All right, so now we have a couple of string methods. There is a lot of other string methods that are available. We're going to go ahead and there's going to be a link to this at the bottom of the script that you can utilize to look at the different string methods here in Python. But here are some very basic ones. So we have hello Python, and I want it all to be uppercase. Well, all I need to do is say text.upper. And since that is a string method, I need to call the method utilizing the opening and closing parentheses, just like as if it were a function. And again, for lowercase, it's as simple as saying text lower. Now, this replace method is a little bit more advanced. We're going to replace the Python substring with the world. And the way we're going to do this is by sending text.replace. And the replace is a method that takes in 2 arguments. And we can see we're getting a hint here. It tells me you're going to provide 2 arguments, the old, which is the literal string, and new, which also has to be literal string. So the old would be Python, while the new is world. All right, and let's see what our code does when it gets executed in this case. I'm going to go ahead and utilize the clear command. Then I'm going to utilize Python 3 to execute the script 2.1 strings. All right, so here we see upper hello Python, lowercase hello Python. We can see all of the letters were changed. There's also title if you would only like the first letter of every instance to be capitalized. And then there's replace. All right, so now we took the old, the Python, the word of Python, the substring of Python, and replaced it with the substring of world. All right, again, there's tons of methods that apply to strings. We are not going to go over each of them individually, but we will provide a link to all the documentation for it. All right. Let's go into our next example here. So I have, you can check if a substring exists within a string using the in keyword. So here we have I love Python. And it tells me, hey, does the message contain love? Well, all I need to do is say, is love the string of love in message? And that will either return a truly or falsy statement. So now let's go ahead and execute our script one more time. So here we see, does the message contain love? And we get back true. It does contain love. All right. Now in our next portion, we're going to talk about something called interpolated string. This is where we can include variables inside of our string by calling the variable itself. And it will automatically typecast it into an actual string. Now, if I were to add 25 into a string, that would probably throw an error. It would say, hey, you're trying to add a number into a string. We don't allow that here. You need to check yourself. But by utilizing string interpolation, we can actually place it and it will cast it and say, hey, even though this is a number, we're going to automatically interpret it as a string. Well, let's see how we can accomplish this. So we have, hello, my name is, and instead of having these dashes, we're going to replace it with this curly brackets and add name. You'll notice at the beginning of the string, we have an F. That's what shows that this is going to be an interpolated string. And we include variables by placing them inside of curly brackets. Now we have this IM. We just include age to show years old. Down below, we have this calculation as well. You can see 5 plus 3 is equal to 5 plus 3. So what it's going to do is it's going to execute the math first. It's going to add 5 plus 3, have a total of 8, and then cast it into a string. So let's take a look at both of these statements here. And we don't have any more exercises, so there's no need to comment anything out. Let's go ahead and execute this string or this script. Well, now we can see, hello, my name is Alice, and I am 25 years old. And then in our interpolation down below for calculation, we see 5 plus 3 is equal to 8. And that is strings in a nutshell. Thank you so much, everyone. Please ensure to complete all of the different exercises for practical application before we move on into the next lesson.